Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our webinar today. We're going to be talking about turning waste into wealth, driving innovation in Puerto Rico, circular economy. My name is Jansen Kohlberg. I'm a program manager for Invest Puerto Rico. And I'm glad to present to you the rest of my colleagues that are part of this great initiative from our Newlab partners. We have Carlos Trevino, Sidney Grushak, and then from the cohort participants, we have Brant Cheatham and Andres Bisono. Glad for everyone to join us. Next slide. So a little bit of background about Invest Puerto Rico and how the partnership came to be. Invest Puerto Rico was created in 2017 by law. Basically, utilizing the expertise of the private and public sector to promote the island as an investment jurisdiction to attract new business and new capital to the island. As a transformational and results-oriented accelerator of economic development, one of the things that we're always doing is trying to benchmark and adopt best practices. One of those benchmarks and adoptions is partnering with organizations like Newlab, who tend to look for innovative ways to implement technologies to solve systemic issues and problems for different jurisdictions, clients around the world. When we're talking about Puerto Rico specifically, we identified the opportunity to do something with waste streams. How can we potentiate waste into a new industry by turning it into added value materials? And without further ado, I will leave you with Carlos Trevino to tell you more about how Newlab and this partnership works.
Thank you, Jansen. You know, it's always hard to present after you, but we'll try our best. In terms of level setting a bit to the audience here, the way we're going to structure this conversation is that I'm going to first introduce Newlab, and then I'll hand it over to my team, who will be presenting all the amazing work that we have been doing in Puerto Rico in this Waste to X development, and obviously our strategic objectives on the island. So before I start introducing Newlab, I want to highlight how important is Puerto Rico for us, how strategic is Puerto Rico for us. And the reality is that we believe that Puerto Rico has all the ingredients to become a economic powerhouse when it comes to one of the most important islands globally. We've seen it through this project, and for us, we're here to develop a set of initiatives that we think are gonna solve what are some of the key challenges in the island, and of course bring more economic development to the people that are here, but also bring new markets. So in terms of Newlab, for a second, we are a deep tech venture platform with a collective of 900 engineers, scientists, entrepreneurs, investors, focused on doing two things: scaling and developing climate technology. And before I start, I want to start by putting our mission in perspective. And to be very specific, we think that 60% of the climate technology needed for deep decarbonization in the world already exists. However, from that 60, only 10% is competitive. And ultimately, that's what we're here for. Our mission as a company is to make sure that we move that 10% to 60. And most importantly, we keep helping companies and governments like yours to develop the other 40 to make sure we move into a net zero world by 2050. So in terms of a little bit of, as you can see in that slide, in terms of our focus areas, when it comes to climate, we're really focused on three areas. We're focused on energy, we're focused on mobility, and we're focused on material science. In terms of our customers, we have three main customers. We work with global governments around the world. We work with the most important Fortune 500 companies in the world. And we also work with climate tech startups. Cindy, if you can move to the next slide. So in terms of our business model, the way we have crafted this business model, it's in an essence, we believe that for the startup or a technology developer to succeed, you need three critical components: infrastructure, industry, and investment. And that's essentially how we operate in our business unit. The way it's gonna go in the next slides, I'm gonna explain a little bit about the 3 business units, how we operate, so you can have more perspective on how you can partner with us or obviously or some of our customers, right? So in terms of infrastructure, just to level set, we have aggregated centers of excellence around the world, but also key pilot sites that make sure that technology startups and governments and industry players can the risk and can keep developing their technologies. A little bit about our headquarters that you see on the left. We are headquarters in Brooklyn. We are under a 90,000 square foot building in 30-acre environment. It's very unique because we have access to the ocean, we have access to pilot sites, and it's really one of the most important, tech development areas. I would say not only in New York, but also in the United States. And to be very specific, New York has been the hub that has been growing the most when it comes to technology development, and obviously Newlab has been a key player in that. And also in terms of startups, we have around 240 startups around there really working in our building and being part of our community. Because of our amazing success, we have grown importantly in the next past years and obviously the next couple of years. In terms of Detroit, we grew a similar building but 3 times the size, really focused on mobility. And again, for all the people that have been close to Detroit, this used to be a powerhouse that now is revitalizing through startups, and Newlab has been a beacon for it, right? We opened that building 6 months ago, and we already have around 80 affiliated startups. So growing importantly and really focus on mobility. And of course, we have other operations in Latam, in Uruguay, and we have announced a couple of our operations in the Middle East and a couple more areas that we're gonna announce soon. Ultimately, what's key is the message here is when it comes to infrastructure, it's, for anyone that has developed technology, understand how important it's not only to have labs, but also pilot sites to make sure that you keep developing the needed technology. And that for us is sort of a key component in how we operate. If we move to the next slide, it's more about not only about the center of excellence that we have around the world, but also about some of the key pilot sites that we have assembled. We're working with ports, we're working with EV charging stations, we're working with 5G connectivity. We are developing constantly pilot sites to make sure that we keep developing these technologies at the pace that the world needs. Before I move to the next slide, which is sort of our industry engagements, I wanna make sure I keep clear in the sense of when it comes to infrastructure, the way you can affiliate to Newlab is through normally a membership. That's either through a startup, or if you are an industry or a government that want to be member of Newlab, you could be member of it. So if we move to the next slide in terms of industry, the way we work here, it's essentially we're either working with governments that really want to foster economic development through innovation, or we're working with Fortune 500s companies that are really either trying to solve an operational challenge in their company, or they're trying to grow into a new business model and into a new region, into a new area, into a new market, and they really want to use technology as the key enabler to do that, right? So as you can see, these are some of the examples of some of our key partners. We are running 25 programs around the world, and we are constantly pushing the needle when it comes to some of the key areas that you can see here. And of course, our flagship program in Puerto Rico that is in the middle, which is this key project, which is converting waste into value-added products. In terms of a model, I won't get into details of it because you're going to see it later, but a couple things to highlight here, which is the way we operate is a combination of management consulting and really understanding the problems with technology acceleration, with engineering, and of course with the deployment of technology. So you're going to see more in the next couple of slides. What I can tell you here is that ultimately we are normally centered around a pilot, and that pilot usually yield in partnerships. And to be very specific, today we have run 100 pilots around the world, and 30% have advanced to commercialization, and that number is unseen in the market, and that's really key to make sure as we keep either doing technology innovation for economic development, or as we are developing technologies for Fortune 500, it's really fundamental to keep that in our mind. Some of the startups that we have that have participated in our projects around the world, as you can see, what's really interesting here is that they started as a pilot, but ultimately they also became investors, and ultimately they have been acquired or have raised a lot of money around the world. We have, for example, Ghost Robotics that recently was acquired at a $400 million valuation. We have Amoji, which is a company that we also have invested in that has just raised $139 million of Series B, etc., etc. And finally, in terms of investments, it's really simple. We're working with the startups day and night. That's a unique spot to be in, not only to make sure that we're helping them develop technology, but most importantly, to have access to some of them. And then if the opportunity arises, we ultimately, if the startup wants, we could be part of the investment group. We normally work through ways, either through direct investment or on non-dilutive funding. Finally, some of our numbers. And before I hand it over to Sydney, if we move to the final slide, we are just to really level set on what we're doing in Puerto Rico. We're working with a lot of governments around the world, and we understand when it comes to economic development and when it comes to the new generation of economic development, innovation is fundamental. We've seen some numbers around the United States, how innovation has really kept the economy growing, and through that we have built our system to make sure that we are fostering economic development. And ultimately, as you saw, our business model, it's really similar to what you're seeing here. The way we're operating in Puerto Rico is deploying these four key components to make sure that we are accelerating development and positioning Puerto Rico as an innovation hub around the world. I think it's going to be easier as you see the examples of some of the things that we've been doing to really understand what we mean by this. But I'm happy to take questions either at the end or happy to have separate conversations to make sure to explain this more, and more importantly, to figure out if we can partner in some ways.
Thanks, Carlos. So as Carlos mentioned, one of Newlab's key competencies and key business offerings is connecting startups to government and corporate partners in the pursuit of economic development. So when we decided to work with Invest Puerto Rico, it was really to see how we can work on a pressing challenge while also using this as an opportunity to bring businesses to the island and create local economic development. And so this studio that we've been operating for about the past year locally on the island, we've been calling Waste to X, which is essentially just waste to some other high value material, Puerto Rico. And this is our Newlab team that's been working on the island, myself and Carlos, along with our leadership, our Chief Product Officer and Chief Strategy Officer, and Jonathan Melendez, who's watching currently, who's our design strategy lead. So we've been on the island, on the ground, periodically to really try and understand what's going on and to make Puerto Rico one of Newlab's key geographies as well. And so when we decided to work with Invest Puerto Rico, we were really looking for a real opportunity area where we could make impact, increase local development, and prove out innovation. And so being an island, it's really difficult to manage waste. You're creating waste streams that there's nowhere for them to go. It's very costly to export them. There's not a lot of space to deal with them locally, and the volumes that are created aren't really large enough to make a lot of waste processing profitable. So our mission was really to find some waste streams that we could work with and deploy a series of pilot projects to test out new technologies to serve as proof cases for innovative ways to convert some type of waste into valuable, high value added products and materials. So we've been, as I said, kind of working on this project for about the past year. And that included first some really deep research with local stakeholders, experts around the world, and innovation leaders to figure out what was possible, what are the limiting factors locally, where's the real opportunity areas, and what can we do within a short period of time to really prove out that there's possibilities. And then we put out an open call, which is essentially an application to any startups and leading businesses across the world to test their technology locally. So we sourced startups who we felt were leaders across the space, and that was last summer. And then planned pilots and tried to figure out what was possible, how to get these things on the ground as quickly as possible. And we're currently in the pilot stage. So finishing up in the next couple of months, and shortly we'll introduce you to Brant and Andres, who are two of our cohort members, result of that open call, and who are pursuing pilots on the island. So why waste to X in Puerto Rico? I touched on this a bit, but essentially, as many islands, there's a waste crisis. Puerto Rico has some unsanitary landfills. There's still illegal dumpings. Many of the landfills have closure orders. We're just running out of space for putting waste and have fewer options on how to deal with that waste. Also, due to a lot of the importing of materials and food, that further exacerbates the waste generation that's generated locally. And the Puerto Rican per capita waste generation exceeds that of the mainland US. And the recycling rate is unfortunately still relatively low. However, there is local momentum. There are a lot of really great local projects and companies who are working on this and who we have leaned on and are trying to partner with to really make a dent in this issue and to try and make these things more efficient and to build on the activity that's already happening locally. And with all of that, hoping that this will lead to real economic development opportunities on the island. So, how did we kind of start this process? In the very beginning, we just looked at across all waste streams what's created on the island, what's managed, what's not, how much of each waste stream is created. So, we did some modeling, talked to a lot of local stakeholders to see how each different waste stream is managed or not, what different materials are actually able to be made out of each waste stream. So, what are the basic components? How can these different types of materials be processed to produce high value ingredients or components? And then, what was happening in the innovation ecosystem? So, where did startups exist that were working on different types of materials, and who was actually possible to process the different materials and create something of high value? So that was kind of how we looked at the different waste streams and tried to narrow down what we thought we could work on. And so through that process, we got to three waste streams of priority, and those were tires, plastics, and sargassum seaweed. And I will explain sargassum a little bit more in case anyone's unfamiliar, but essentially it's a seaweed that has been blooming out of control in the past decade and washing up on the beaches, where it creates a host of health and economic and environmental issues. So currently unmanaged and figuring out ways to deal with that. And so once we got those waste streams narrowed down, we created some hypotheses around what are the different technologies that are out there that could work on these different materials and how could they be converted into products of high value that would make economic sense for a business to be able to gain value from these materials. And so we put out some calls to action asking for companies to apply given these parameters. And from that open call, we got a cohort of 5 companies from globally and one local company who are working on these different materials who we felt were really strong and high potential to actually create an impact and to create value from these different waste streams. And so, just very briefly, that's Carbon Cycle, and Brant will be speaking to you in just a moment to describe his company. Basically, they use heat to convert used tires into fuels without significant energy requirements. So they're currently working on some pre-development of an actual small scale plant to convert tires locally. And then in the future, there's the potential to add additional feedstocks such as plastics. And then in terms of sargassum, we have 4 companies where we're trying to prove out an actual net new value chain to manage this waste stream. And so that's SOS Carbon, and Andres will speak to you in a moment as well, who is collecting and harvesting this sargassum from the nearshore environment. The Lasso Ocean, which is a Norwegian and Mexican company that has a decentralized system to create micro biorefineries to actually extract the useful compounds from the sargassum seaweed. And then Sway and Pangaea are 2 end-use companies creating the products that for consumers to buy from those seaweed materials. And Sway is creating a bioplastic film, and Pangaea is creating a seaweed yarn. And then we've also been working with Flora Rural, who is a local Puerto Rican startup, creating building materials for the construction industry that incorporates sargassum as well. And just want to mention here that we have Newlab supports pilot projects. So the first real proof of concepts of these technologies on the ground. And then we're always thinking about the future development. So there's a lot of opportunity for investment in the next phase of the development of these startups to actually scale their technologies and to allow them to really increase that impact. So thinking about how to further the impact and actually commercialize the technologies and get them really into the market. And so we have, like I said, we're now underway with our pilots, actually putting things on the ground, working with local partners and getting things up and going to make this an actual reality. And so now I'm going to pass it off to a couple of our cohort members to further describe their companies and the pilots that they're pursuing in Puerto Rico. And we will start with Andres Bisono Leon from SOS Carbon. Oh, sorry. Nope. Wrong one. Starting with Brant. Brant Cheatham from Carbon Cycle, please.
Yes, thank you, Sydney. Appreciate that. Andreas, you'll get your turn. My name is Brant Cheatham. I am the CEO of Carbon Cycle. We are a waste to value company based in Missouri. Effectively, we have a technology that's a pyrolysis-driven technology. So we call it an advanced pyrolysis technology, which is geared towards waste to value, turning scrap tires in this case into valuable materials. So we start with the problem. As Sydney mentioned, there is a huge tire problem on the island. More than 6 million scrap tires are produced each year in Puerto Rico, which is well above the national average. And certainly scrap tires are a problem that we all know of. But the silver lining to this is that scrap tires are actually full of a bunch of value. They're energy dense. They have the materials that make them are incredibly valuable. So we can use our process to take those through the circular system and create valuable materials out the other end. So right now, less than 5% of Puerto Rico's tires are being recycled. So with the Newlab Invest Puerto Rico process and project, we have been teamed up with a group out of Yabucoa called Once and For All Tires, also called OEFA, also known as OEFA, who they are on a mission to deal with the scrap tire problem, or begin to deal with the scrap tire problem in Puerto Rico through chipping the tires and creating value add end products. They make rubber mats. They make infill for gym floors. They make all sorts of products out of that rubber. But the truth is they need to increase their capacity, which is a difficult thing often to do when you're selling products, to markets, to consumer markets. So our plan is to connect with OEFA and help them increase their scrap tire recycling capacity through our advanced pyrolysis system. That system is called advanced pyrolysis thermal conversion, as I mentioned. So essentially, what is this? So it is not an incineration process. This is a baking of tires. So pyrolysis is essentially a process of high heat and low oxygen. So instead of the waste feedstock burning, it is actually just cooking. So it's in a reactor, which is a sealed system. It gets hot up to 900 plus degrees, and the materials slowly start to cook. And essentially, it smokes off all the oils and the gas from the material, and what's left is some steel and some carbon. So a scrap tire is essentially made up of carbon, steel, and oil. And then out of the process of thermally converting this with our system, you get some syngas, which can be turned into electricity. It's an innovative process that's been used for a long time, but our proprietary system has perfected it and made it a far more efficient system than otherwise. So yeah, what are we up to in Puerto Rico? As I mentioned, we've partnered with Once and For All Tires in Yabucoa to potentially increase the capacity of their scrap tire recycling program. So right now we are in the planning, design, and permitting phase, which has us working with OIFA to do some design work to figure out what this would look like, what the system might look like in their facility that exists in Yabucoa. Working on the permitting side to make sure that that's all lined up. The next step in this process will be to deploy a small system. So we would deploy a small 3 to 5 ton a day system, which is a fairly small system. It basically is 3 shipping containers in size, and we would build that in our Missouri factory and ship that down and get that started to basically just to get the process beginning. So we would cook some tires, make sure it works, make sure the streams are all in place, the end users are all in place, everything is good to go. After which we would begin to scale the system to fit the problem. So it is a big problem. So there is lots of room to scale this system once it is installed. Presumably start with a 25 ton a day system, and then from there, assuming success on that one and all the economics are making sense, we would expand beyond that to a bigger system. And I think that's the story. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Grant. So that is our pilot that is working on tires. And then, as mentioned, we're working kind of across the value chain for sargassum. So sargassum is kind of a new problem. It's a naturally occurring material, but it's currently being produced in quantities that are unheard of until the last decade through a combination of a changing climate and increased nutrients running off into the ocean. It's really just being produced in a way that's out of control and negatively impacting local fishing communities, the nearshore environment and ecosystem for habitat for turtles and fish and also other critical species, and also creates public health impacts when it degrades and the gas is exposed on the beaches. So we think managing it is essential, but also managing it in a way that can create opportunity and create products from this material presents a great opportunity that is essentially unique to the Caribbean. And so there's no current value chain for managing this. Some hotels are raking it up and putting it in piles, but not a lot going on. So we've put together 4 companies that will work together essentially to create this value chain. And at the top of that value chain is SOS Carbon. So I'll now pass it off to Andres to explain what SOS Carbon is doing and their success so far.
Awesome. Good afternoon. Thank you, Sydney, for the introduction. Thank you, Newlab and Invest Puerto Rico, for not only having us in this webinar, but part of the Puerto Rico studio. It has been already a couple months working on the ground, starting with the regulatory process for Puerto Rico and obviously for the US. and we're very eager to be next week in Puerto Rico already deploying a pilot. So looking forward to the results and what we're building in Puerto Rico and throughout the Caribbean. With that said, my name is Andres. Just for some context on how SOS Carbon started in our journey, we are a spin-out from MIT at the Mechanical Engineering Department. Myself being from the Dominican Republic, I became aware of the sargassum problem back in 2018, a little bit late perhaps. And anyways, convinced colleagues at MIT to start developing technology, not only to be able to mitigate at scale the climate crisis that is happening in the Caribbean, but actually be able to transform this crisis into value chains, into value-add products. And our mission, our wide mission has been to also complete the cycle. But as Sydney walked you through, we're very eager in the Puerto Rico studio to join other companies leading their own spaces in the transformation of seaweed in order to propel the efforts being done and the value chains being built in the Caribbean. With that said, our process starts with the harvesting of sargassum in the ocean. Why harvesting it in the ocean? First, because harvesting is the only way that we really get to stop it from reaching the shores and from causing the problems that Sydney mentioned to tourism, the ocean ecosystem, human health, the local economy. But also because that's the only way that we can ensure a reliable, clean feedstock for them being able to process it in value-add products. We, from the beginning, have put first the local communities and how to also generate employment to these marginalized sectors, especially like the fishermen. So we also looking into win-win relationships. We developed the hardware at MIT that transforms artisanal vessels into high-capacity harvesters. Each boat having a capacity of up to 70 tons per day. For you to, I guess, better picture what 70 tons mean in pounds, that translates to around 150,000 pounds on a single day. That's what we have been able to really do so far. On a day, I also mean a 7-hour period, like a worth it. So once we harvest it, we have developed also methods for quick extraction that will fit each site. As you know, each beach might have its own characteristics. Some beaches are very populated with tourists or residents. Other sites might have like a marina. So we have been able to develop methods that also go in hand with the locations that we deploy. Internally at SOS Carbon, we're focusing on the agriculture and utilizing seaweed for a biostimulant or a organic fertilizer. But as I said, through the the experiences that we had through the Caribbean and also working with strategic stakeholders, leaders, we're eager to be working with the other companies in this value chain. Next slide, Sydney. So as I was saying, we already work and have systems in 3 countries. Dominican Republic, we started in 2020. Antigua and Barbuda, we started 2022. And Mexico, in which we have systems and will be deploying this year, early this year. And in Puerto Rico, that we will be on site next week. So looking forward to that. Next slide, please. As I also highlighted, we put first the local communities. So far, we have trained and empowered over 80 fishermen across the different locations that we operate. And this has not only been around harvesting sargassum, but even taking a step further, which has been also or has included to be to manufacture the equipment that we also utilize for these operations. Next slide, please. Oh, that's it. Awesome. So again, eager to be here and looking forward to the results that all the companies in these cohorts, I'm sure, will be accomplishing. And yeah, thank you. Looking forward to any questions that any of you might have.
Thanks, Andres. So we've been in Puerto Rico now for about a year. We're in this essentially final stage of Newlab's program where we implement pilots, we see the results. We will be having a showcase of those results in April, which I'll mention shortly. And then we essentially look for the next step, help our cohort companies to get funding, to commercialize, to really expand their impact locally, and to make this into a real market opportunity. So this is something that we are continuing as this first stage comes to an end. And we're also, Newlab is very committed to Puerto Rico. We see it as a strategic geography for our growth as well. And we're essentially looking to advance this Waste to X program, also tackle additional challenges, and kind of see where we can go from here. So we're looking not only to try and get Andres and Brandt and our other companies that we're piloting on the ground to really expand their impact and build up their commercialization. So that's one area that we're doing. We're also looking to source, investments to support those, and also to tackle a new challenge. So something that Puerto Rico is ripe for innovation in many areas, not just related to circularity. So we're looking for also a new topic to bring in additional companies and to look for additional ways to have impact locally. And all of that is to support kind of a Newlab platform in Puerto Rico. So as Carlos mentioned earlier, the things we need to be true to kind of set up in a geography are: do we have industry involvement? Is there investment to help companies actually grow and commercialize? And is there infrastructure? So making sure that we have partners locally where we can deploy pilots, where the startup companies can actually get a taste of being in the market and to being able to test out their tech on the ground. So trying to prove all of those out with these first couple of projects in Puerto Rico to support a longer innovation play here on the island between Invest Puerto Rico, Newlab, and all of our local stakeholders. And so, again, that's kind of thinking about what are the biggest challenges and how can we have impact in a way that also propels economic development. And that's key to what we see as our success on the island, is looking for ways to build up this network, support those three qualifications for new challenges and new implementation of technology and new development. So we're looking at things like energy and blue carbon and manufacturing and building off of the resources that the island already has to try and bring in innovation and make a large impact. So what's next? As I said, we're continuing these pilots. Andres is launching next week. Brandt is also in the process of working with Once and For All Tires to look into the actual construction of a plant and to have these pilots kind of get some results, build out those proof cases that they have effectively been able to prove on the island, and then to see where we go from there. So those pilots will be wrapping up towards the end of March. And then in April, we will be having a demo week where we actually have the cohort, everyone in the cohorts to present their results. We'll have some activities for stakeholders locally to meet and greet and network and talk about the future. we're again doing some research currently on a new topic and other opportunities for innovation. And then next summer, we'll have kind of our second open call in relation to that new topic to think about new companies that could come to the island as well. So, really, just building off of this circularity work, proving that it's possible for this to be a new whole industry on the island to take the waste that's created, create value from that waste, and bring in innovative opportunities and leading cutting edge technologies and startups to support the island and its economic development, create new jobs, bring in investment, and really attack local issues and provide new opportunity areas through this and through additional innovation areas as well. So, thank you everyone for joining us. I think now if anyone has any questions, feel free to drop those in the chat. We are happy to address those. But yeah, thank you everyone very much.
Yeah.
And I think we can stop sharing unless anyone has anything in relation to the slides.
Thank you all for joining. We'll give it 1 or 2 more minutes to see if any questions come in. But otherwise, thanks to the team for your time, and excited about the future of this and every other project that will come after. It's great stuff, and I'm super excited. So.
Yeah, and if anyone is interested in getting in touch, please feel free to drop your contact info in the chat,
Yes.
and we would love to hear from you and to connect offline as well.